Welcome back to Adobe Photoshop, and today we're going to take a look at the saving process, and you will be surprised at all the steps and complications that are involved when simply saving a photo. Yes, most people do this process wrong. When I teach it to my students, they're shocked. It takes them a couple of weeks to understand the process. The cool part is, at the end of this video, I'm going to give you a little hint on a way to make this a whole lot easier. Let's take a look at this image here. So we've got this image here, and the first thing we need to decide when we print something is, and then we're going to take a look at sizing for the web. Those are two different options, so you have to do them separately. Yeah, I know it's a pain in the neck, and that's where the little trick at the end is going to come in. So we've got this image here, and it's natively shot like most 35mm images in a 2:3 range. As you can see up here, I have selected the crop tool, and in the crop tool, I've selected, we're going to print this at 5:7. Now, right now, 5:7 is in a portrait mode. Let's go up here to the little arrows. I call them the flippy flop arrows, and we're going to flip them so it's horizontal. And we're going to recrop this image, and we're just going to slide this in. And what does it look like if I do that? We can slide this up a little. We're losing a little bit here. Let's go ahead, bring that down, and we'll see if that looks good or not looks good. We've changed the ratio, and we need to change the ratio because the ratio is important when it comes to printing. So if you want to print something, you want to know how it's exactly going to print, and we need to do that ratio change. But remember, as we saw in the last video, changing the ratio does not size the image. Now, could we have done this all at the same time? Yes, and we'll take a look at it. But we're going to go up here to Image, drop down to Image Size, and now we're going to tell it what size we want it. Right over here, we're in pixels. We're going to change that to inches. And we're going to change these inches. And the reason the inches are so high, because it's in a resolution of 72, we're going to change that to 300. A normal printing resolution is 300. And resolution only has to do with printing. When you size for the web, it doesn't matter what your resolution is. If you've heard 72 DPI, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. First of all, we don't use DPI, we use PPI. We change that to 300, and then we're simply just going to change the width to 7. It's automatically going to change the other dimension to 5 because we've already changed that ratio. Right now I have preserve pixels 2. I'm going to switch that back to automatic. That is the default. Preserve pixels 2 is for upscaling an image. So if you have a small image, you want to make it bigger, and you don't use super size, you want to use the preserve pixels 2 right there. But we're going to be good because we're sizing this down. We're going to hit OK, and you can see it made my image smaller. Right now, we're viewing this image at 46%. I'm going to hit Command plus, 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 and we're at 100%. And we always need to view our image at 100% for sharpening, because all images and most cameras have an anti-aliasing filter that softens the image a bit. In what unsharp mask does, that's going to be our sharpening method, or any sharpening method, they all do the same thing, is they are increasing edge contrast. So what does that mean? So we're going to come down here and we're going to look at this. And it's very important that you do this process after you size. And I'm going to post on my webpage a little sheet that gives you sort of a hint in the PDF of the different sizes for different resolutions or sizes of images and how much you should sharpen them. And you can already see this going on. So it looks like this image has probably been sharpened before. So this is just something that I downloaded off the internet. And this is showing what is happening when we sharpen. So notice we have an edge. So we have light, we have dark. And what happens when you sharpen an image? You have the edge pixel, and on the darker side, it darkens a pixel. As you can see, that pixel is darkened. And on the lighter side, it lightens a pixel. And that is how you increase the sharpness of an image. And that works in all kinds of photography. Back in film, people are like, oh, my image isn't sharp. Well, if your image isn't sharp, it's out of focus. What gives the appearance of being sharper is contrast and tonal range. And so we're increasing that contrast, and that gives the appearance that that edge is sharper. If we come up here to filter, and one little trick you need to do, and there's two different ways to do this. To sharpen an image, you'll see over here, I've got all these layers. You must sharpen the image layer, all right? Now, because we're gonna output this and we don't really need the layers anymore, I'm gonna go up to Layer, Flatten Image. And what that does is it takes all those layers, compresses them into one, applies everything that we saw in the layers, and we're just here because that's gonna be the way it is when we output this. And then we're gonna come up here, and there's multiple ways to sharpen, but we're gonna look at my favorite, and it's the oldest one, strangely enough. So we're gonna go to Filter, Sharpen, and Unsharp Mask. And yeah, it sounds like it's not sharpening it, but Unsharp Mask is what we want. And I'm gonna bring this in right here close to this edge so you can see what's happening. So the amount refers to how much of the sharpening is going to be applied to the image. The radius is how many pixels. So we have 1, that means 1 pixel this way, 1 pixel this way. If I made it higher, it's going to sharpen multiple pixels this way, multiple pixels this way. That's not going to look good. I always leave this at 1 right there. Threshold is the complicated one, and that's why I think a lot of people don't use this, but this is why it's great. Higher the number, the larger the contrast difference needs to be. So look, we don't want to sharpen this area in here because there's no edge contrast, and we don't want to sharpen this area. We only want to sharpen areas where there's detail. Think of skin. You don't want to sharpen someone's skin because it's going to make their skin not smooth and look good. So we only want to sharpen the areas where there's a contrast difference, like eyelashes compared to skin, and that's going to give you that pop. We want to raise this, but you also want to change it. So if you have an image where all the values are really close together, you're going to have a lower threshold because it's not going to be able to do it. But here we have sort of a high contrast image, so we can raise this up. So let's go ahead and do 6 or 7, and that's going to be good. I'm going to go ahead, and for a 5x7, I think I'm going to sharpen this around 30%. And you can see, so we're getting a darker pixel on one side and a lighter pixel on the other side. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. And notice that this viewfinder is automatically in 100%. And that's because the only way you can really see what the sharpening is doing is looking at your image at 100%. Now, we're not doing it here because I want you to see what's going on. But we're going to hit OK, Command 0. We're going to get out. We can go back to 100%. And that's what this image is going to look like. We only want to sharpen the areas of high contrast, okay? One of the biggest mistakes I see is over sharpening an image where it doesn't look good. That's why you must sharpen after you size, and the amount of sharpening is going to depend. The larger the file, the more you're going to sharpen. The smaller the file, the less the amount when you sharpen. All right, so we're good, but guess what? We're not done. So where are we going to output this? And that makes a big difference in photography. If I'm outputting to an Epson printer, I can print in the Adobe color space, and that is the working space that I work in. If I output to the web, it needs to be in sRGB. Printer might have a custom output. They might use sRGB, they might use Adobe, they might use ProPhoto. Offset presses almost always use custom profiles. So we need to decide what we're going to do. If we need to change that profile, we're going to go to Edit to Profile. I usually set a saving action up specifically for specific output situations. We can see right here my source space. What I'm working in is Adobe RGB. And that's perfect for this image because I'm going to output it to a printer in theory. But you'll notice that my destination space says sRGB when I pretty much only convert to profile when I'm saving out to the web. So that's sRGB. And one little trick is if you have layers here and you want to save your layers, make sure flatten image to preserve appearance is not checked because otherwise it will flatten. So if you remember when I went flatten image, I could have done that in this, but I don't want to actually convert the profile. So we're going to hit cancel because I don't want to do that to this image. We're in the color profile that we want. And now we can simply save our image out. So we're going to go to File. I'm going to use Save As, but the new way to save is really save as a copy. I'm going to explain the difference. I have changed mine so it works like it used to years ago. And basically, save as a JPEG isn't available anymore and save as. It's save as a copy. But I've changed it and said, no, 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 I want to do it in there as well. All right, so this is my test folder where I'm going to save that photo in. And I have options. So what format do I need to save? So you can see right here, format. Right now it's sitting on JPEG. But we have different file formats in photography that we can use. If I wanted to save that image and keep all the layers as just a working file because I wasn't going to print it, I would save it as a Photoshop or a TIFF file right here, because both of those formats support layers. And I'll always do that. I will take my image, and when I'm done toning it, I'm going to save it as a Photoshop file. It's not cropped. It's not sharpened. The profile is not converted, nothing. I always save it after I tone as a Photoshop file. That means it's my working file. And then after I've done that, I will crop and size and sharpen that image. In this case, we did that for output for print. Now, a TIFF file and a Photoshop file are what we call lossless. They save all the information in the whole file. Now, by doing that, by saving every single pixel, it creates a massive large file. And some places don't want that massive large file, especially, so I use a ProLab called Miller's, and I have to send all my printing files as JPEGs. If they had to store everything that they got as a TIFF, they would have a massive amount of data and it would just be overwhelming and it probably wouldn't be affordable. But at home, I don't have that issue and I don't print a lot of stuff. So saving as a TIFF is going to give me a better quality image because it's saving all that data. If I save this as a JPEG, it uses what we call compression, or it's lossy. So what that means is it doesn't save all the data. So if you look at my shirt where it's blue and then there's some white areas, where it's blue, it's not remembering all those pixels. It's like, oh, this whole area is that color. So I'll remember some of these pixels, but then I'm just going to throw the rest out because I don't need to know that. And when I open the photo back up, I can put that color in. And you lose some detail because there is variation. Now, the algorithms that do that today are very, very good. I don't think most people would be able to tell the difference between a JPEG saved image and a TIFF saved image. Today, we also have the availability to use webP, and that's another great file for using on the web, and it's becoming more popular because the file size is smaller. If you have a website and you want Google to rank you high, one of the things it looks at is page speed. How fast does your page load? So if you have smaller file sizes on a site with a lot of images, that has the possibility of ranking you higher because you have smaller web sizes. And webP is much smaller than JPEG. I even use another program that I can show you called jpegmini, which is an algorithm that makes it about 40% smaller than a regular JPEG, and it does an awesome job. And it reduces the size by about 40%, but in some circumstances, the webP even smaller. What are we going to do? We're going to save this as a TIFF. And so we're going to hit that. You can see right here, it does not have the color profile embedded, but I do want to embed that color profile and not mess up with the color mapping. That's going to ensure I get a more accurate print. So we want to embed that. Got my folder. I can rename this. Now, what I normally do, and I'll just keep this with same name, is I'm going to put 5 times 7. And what that says is I've sized this to print out at 5 by 7. If it was 8 by 10, I would put 8 times. And we're going to hit save. You're going to get this new little window that we see right here. You can compress these images. We do not want to do that. I have Macintosh because I'm working on a Mac, and everything else is basically going to be left the same. I'm going to hit OK. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back and I'm going to hit revert. we are back at the start, and this is the problem. We already sharpened and sized and did everything. We need to start over. So if you remember, I said I always save my photo as a PSD when it's done toned. And the reason is because you need to start over when you do this saving process. You do not want to sharpen an image twice. That's not going to work well. We can come here. We've got this image. This time we're going to size it out for the web. Let's say for the web, I want this to stay in that 2:3 ratio. So we're going to go ahead and hit the arrows. I'm still going to crop this because it looks a little weird. And we're going to move this over. And that looks good. We're going to say that's how we want it. We're going to apply that crop. And I'm going to then go over here. Remember, I can flatten that image, but I can also flatten the image, if you remember, by converting the profile. So I'm going to show you a different way to do the same thing. So I'm going to go to Edit. I'm going to go to Convert to Profile. And remember, for the web, this must be in this sRGB format. And you can see it says flatten image to preserve appearance. So what it's going to do, it's going to flatten this image, which is what I'm going to have to do no matter what. So I'm going to hit OK. It's going to flatten that image, and it's converted to that color profile. When you do this, you will not see a change in the image. It's just changing the color mapping, which we're not going to get into because it will be too complicated for most people. All right, so we have this image. Now, what do we need to do? We need to do two things. We need to size it, and we need to sharpen it. So we always know we need to size before we sharpen. So we're going to go to Image, Image Size. And we're going to change inches to pixels because when you size for the web, it is always in pixels. The resolution has nothing to do with sizing an image. Right now it's at 72. I could put this at 143. It doesn't make a difference. What I set for my pixel dimension is what the size of the image is going to be. I usually size for the long edge, okay? So if I was putting this on my web page, I'm going to put it at 1,440 pixels because that's the size of my web page. It will never be any larger, so there's no sense in making the image larger. And it will automatically convert the height for me if I size the long edge. And we're going to go ahead and simply hit OK. So it made this teeny tiny image. Remember, I said you should always look or view the image at 100%. I have a high resolution image, so it's not so big. I understand that. If you have a lower resolution image, the image might appear like this on your screen. So depending on your screen resolution is also going to depend on how big a sized image is at 1,440 pixels. Now, I'm going to go back up. I'm going to go to Filter, Sharpen, Sharp Mask. And we've got our unsharp mask. I'll move it right here next to the image so everybody can see it. Now, for something this small, I'm going to sharpen it at 15 instead of 1. I'm going to still keep that threshold of 6 because we do have high contrast, and I don't want to sharpen all this smoke in all this other area. And I don't want to sharpen all this fog that we see in the image. So I've got this at 15, 1, and 6. I'm going to hit OK. And we're done with that. Now, the last step is to save it. So for most people, they're going to need to use save as a copy because save as a JPEG or webP will not be available. So we're going to do it that way. So I'm going to hit save as a copy. We're in the same folder that I have, which was test. I'm going to call this one Vietnam. But what I'm going to do up here is because I saved this for the web, I put 1,440p. Meaning 1,440 pixels. So I know exactly what size it is. And we will go ahead and we're going to do this two ways. So I'm going to save this as a JPEG. And we're embedding the color profile. You can see we've got that sRGB just like we wanted. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. We're going to move this all the way up to its maximum. You want baseline standard. Don't use these. And we're going to hit OK. And we're going to do it again. So I'm going to go File, Save as a Copy, because I'm going to save it two different ways. And we're going to have the same image. We're going to call this one the same thing, 1440p. We're going to output this as that webP. And we're going to hit Save. We're going to get the little window that we see right here. We want lossy. That's going to compress it, but I'm going to move this all the way up to large file. We're going to hit OK, and boom, that's done. So if I call the window back up, I want you to see this. So if we take a look at this image, the file that we sized for print was 9.5 megabytes. The image that we sized as a JPEG is 9.81 kilobytes, and the same image that we saved for WebP is half the size at 490 kilobytes. There is a small difference when you save a JPEG, and I have a blog post on my webpage at Shutterbug Academy showing you this. The JPEG at full size is a little bit better quality. Most people won't be able to discern it unless they're looking side by side at something else. Also, when you save for the web, the image quality you see on your monitor is going to be much better looking than what comes out on the web. So be ready that it might be a little bit darker and not have as wide of a grayscale. That's normal. Same thing with printing. We also have what I use, which is used to use, and I might actually start switching to a webP, but I have this program called jpegmini. This is the older version. I think they have 3 out. I have 2, but I can export this as same. So we're going to go to test, and I will call this, actually, I'll just call this one mini. So we have a different name. I'm going to go ahead and export that out. All right. So now we've got that. So you can see the JPEG mini is the same image, but it sized it out at 198 kilobytes. And the WebP is 490 kilobytes. So we can see there was a lot of compression done to my JPEG mini image. So I could go ahead and resave the WebP at 85%, and it would probably get it below that 198 kilobytes. But you can see there's a big difference. So this is why I use JPEG mini, and I have for years. But the new WebP at about 85% is an extremely small file. All right, so we've got our uncropped image. If you remember from the last video, when we're in the crop tool, we can actually do width, height, and resolution. I could have made the 5 inches here, the 7 inches here. We'll flip it. And I could crop, and this method would do 2 things. It would change the ratio and size it all at the same time. Now, I still would need to convert to profile if I needed to, or sharpen as well. But that can save some time and steps if you want to use that. You can also set up presets in the crop tool so you don't have to constantly do it. So when you click on this, you'll notice you can hit new crop preset. You can make one, save that into the computer if it's something you use all the time. And like that, you're ready to go. And I told everybody I'll show them a little trick. So if you remember, I said at the beginning of the video, I'm going to show you a much better way to sharpen an image. And so that is with what we call actions. And so if we click on actions right here, you'll see I've got a series of actions that I have. And I must have just done this one so it's stuck in red, which is not good, but we can fix that. And the red actions are the action that I use. The way Photoshop works is when you're creating an action, it can't discern whether it's vertical or horizontal. So you have to make a horizontal action and a vertical action. But then you can create what's called a conditional action that says if the image is portrait or vertical, use the vertical action. If it is landscape or horizontal, use the horizontal action. Right here, I have 3 actions, one 2000, one 1440, and one at 500. And I have added this whole set of actions for free on my website. So all you have to do is go to the description, look at that, click on the link, go in there. The actions are free to download. You just need to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And there's also a tutorial video on how all this stuff works. But watch. So we can click on 1440 and boom, it's sized and ready to go. All I need to do is hit save and we're done. So we can create actions to make the process of what I just talked. That's all I got for you today. That is it on the video for saving. If you have any or questions, you can leave those below. Don't forget to subscribe and have an absolutely wonderful day.